everybody. Sorry about that. It's normal. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Been here for a couple of days, and I've listened to some of the things that people had to say, some of the things that they think is an attitude stop them from doing things in schools, but not really. That's kind of my boldness about what we've done as big picture learning around the world, and started in the United States, in Providence, Rhode Island, or basically you could say I started when I was 7 years old, or 6 years old when I was in kindergarten, and caused a ruckus right back then and there. So that's big picture. I'm going to just start off by showing you something. I want everybody in the room to look at that and tell me what it is. How many people can tell me what that is? 2, 3, 4, 5. Honestly, about 6 people in the room. 6 people in the room. Anyone, the gentleman in the back, tell me what that is. What's that? That's right. It's the formula for a quadratic equation. Very, very simple. All right. I think you all went through school. You all took the the exams. I shouldn't say it like that. And yet, you can't identify that. If somebody has it tattooed on their arm, that's because they're cheating on the test. All right? And now we talk about empathy and caring and compassion. The person down there has it tattooed on the neck so the person behind him can remember the formula. All right? That's what we call empathy in schools, and we check off the box, right? All right. So I just want to point that out to everybody. I'd get the same result in the United States. I'd get the same result in Germany. I'd get the same result in the UK. It doesn't matter where you go. It's a learn and forget unless you're, well, people say, well, yeah, but what if you're an engineer? And I go, no. Honestly, a friend of mine at Stanford did a study about engineers using mathematics. They use it very, very little. Very, very little. They're thinking all the time. They're planning, designing, building, but not necessarily using that kind of math. So I'm going to do a few slides that I did the other day because I think that they're important. So this one was sent to me by an Australian colleague who works in our schools, Mark Thompson. He works out where people don't live most of the time, except we still have schools there in these very, very remote places that the people who live there have to generate businesses, and we're helping them do that online and as people who want to go there. So it says, we are here, and you're in the middle of nowhere with nobody around. We, still a we. It is now, the rest is guesswork. It is now, the rest is guesswork. The work emerges as you do it. And that's what you have to realize, and that's what we've done with Big Picture. You have to iterate and evolve the work. Our work is very, very edgy, and you'll hear about it a little bit, and some of you have heard already. The point is that we're edgy, not out of the box. Every one of our schools is a public school. We wanted to prove to the world that you can do the things that we say in the system. Now all of you, from the center out to the edge, can do any and all of those things that you want to do. Why doesn't it happen? That's the question. So that's kind of an important statement, this emergence of work. Here's a front cover of the New Yorker magazine from about 3-4 years ago. And when I saw it, I called up a friend of mine who's at Stanford, who's a big-time neurologist. He wrote a book called The Hand, and his premise was, and his practice was, because he was a hand surgeon for people who had hand injuries who were classically trained musicians. When there was nothing really wrong with their hand, there was something wrong with their head, psychologically. There was nothing wrong with their hands. And when we saw this illustration, we both called one another up. And I called up the guy who did the illustration. I said, did you know what you drew? He said, I think I knew what I drew. I drew it, didn't I? I said, well, tell me what you think you drew. And he was where we were on it. You can explain it neurologically as dopamine and oxytocin working together. Dopamine's the neurotransmitter that makes you want to do things that you want to get better at. And oxytocin is a neurotransmitter that bonds you to people. When your relationships and what you want to get better at come together, which is what's going on in that little baby with the mommy, it starts at that age, all of a sudden the learning is incredible. And what we've done with our schools is connect advisor teachers to students in ways that they know one another intellectually, socially, emotionally, and through their interests and choices, to mentors on the outside world, which is what Roy was talking about, except we do it very, very early on in their school careers, where 2 days a week our students are out exploring their interests with people that they choose around who they want to learn from. And our results have been quite extraordinary. And not have they only been extraordinary in terms of the academic side of things and students getting into college or going into the workforce, but they've also been extraordinary around the development of the self, which is really what we're talking about as educators. It's the child we're making, not furniture, a very, very famous vocational educator who went to MIT, who barely finished high school, who had 70 patents, one of the first graduates of MIT. His wife was also the first woman graduate of MIT and is the grandma of cooking as a science. So goes way, way back, and somehow we lost all that piece around. We're here as a responsibility to develop children and to do the best we can for them. So here's a little girl, and we got to turn the audio on. So that little girl's my granddaughter. No, it's not my granddaughter. Just kidding. I'd be very proud if she was, but all children are like that. Where does that come from? We don't know, but it's part of who we are as a race. It comes through all the time. That little girl's going to go to school. What are we going to do with her? Make her sit in a seat? Not ask her what she's interested in? What kind of learning is going on there? What kind of rhythms do we have in our body that we don't pay attention to that involve learning and mathematics and the ability to pattern make, which is math, not just a quadratic equation? So this is a grandfather and his grandson. The intensity of the learning there. I want to learn from you. I want to learn this from you. He doesn't have to be there. Now, is he going to be a carpenter? I can't tell you. But a lot of people who start out like this become some of the best inventors in the world. It's through that type of learning, through an adult and a child, in a one-on-one situation, that dopamine and the oxytocin, however you want to describe it, relationships and what you want to get better at, it starts, and it's a pattern, and it's there, and schools don't pay attention to it. We started paying attention to that as big picture schools. This is another picture. A woman sent this to me, one of my friends, Bobby Hill, lives in New Orleans. We're doing a school in New Orleans called New Harmony High, which won an XQ prize for $10 million. What's the new harmonies? Given climate change. What's the new food? What's the new transportation? What's the new tools? What's the new housing? That's what the students are going to be doing there as they're doing their academic work, because we all have to account to standards. All do that. They're over here. But how you get there is what we changed. So here's a little turtle. There's circles within circles within circles within circles. There's the math. There's a pattern going on. Turns out that Grandma Bobby is an architect. Turns out that her son is an architect. Turns out that this little boy, what's he doing? He's trying to develop a relationship with his grandma, arguably, and his dad, who are architects. They're drawing. He's drawing. We all draw. So this is one of our students. I'm going to show you through who he is, what we do. 2 days a week, each and every one of our students are out in high school with their mentors that they choose. And we don't have enough time to tell you how we get there, but they make the choices and we have a way of doing that. So they learn those skill sets, each and every one of them, to acquire, to get out there, figure out how to ask people to come into their places, to do internships where they develop relationships that are a lot of times lifelong. This is Noah. He's at the University of Santa Cruz right now, one of the UCs, a top school in the United States. He invented, he worked with a machine that cost $10,000. He took that machine and brought down the cost to $700. He did that with other people, but he was the key inventor of it. So you'll hear him talk right now about what we do. If we can.
Here, I'm able to do things that affect how San Diegans think about water, and I'm able to do something where I can put my mark on the world that I will soon be coming into. I'm Noah, 16. And I go to the San Diego Met High School, which is a school where students start participating in an internship program beginning in the first semester of 9th grade. Coastkeeper, their mission statement is to have drinkable, swimmable, and fishable waters in San Diego. Basically, we want more fish in our rivers, we want our rivers to be cleaner, and we wanted them to be less filled with trash.
That looks pretty good.
The internship program is a great way for students to find new opportunities, to do things that they might not do during the normal school day. Meet people who they wouldn't meet, have experiences, get trained to do things. Basically, just here's how you need to get your foot in the door.
When Elliot, Washor, and myself had the opportunity to create a new school, we really closed our eyes and said, if we didn't know there was such a thing as school, what would it be like? And it wouldn't be the 50-minute classes and you ring a bell and you run to some other place. That's not how learning is.
If we have low oxygen, high bacteria, then there's really something in the water that we need to figure out. What's the worst bacteria that we have here in San Diego?
Tijuana, no question.
No question, yeah.
And so we set out that every kid was going to have their individual learning plan. What are your skills? What are your interests? Then we send them out in the community where the real world's there. And they work 2 days a week from 9th grade on.
So instead of going from school to work, we really go from work to school. What are the real academics in the real world that are really being used? And then use that as a motivator to get kids more engaged in school.
That's a good job. One more to filter? Yep. Having Noah working alongside me is, I think, both really valuable for Noah and really valuable for me. For Noah, he gets really an insider's look at what it's like to have a career. Today we went to the San Diego River and we collected some water samples. First thing we did is we collected an unfiltered water sample that we're going to bring back to the lab and run bacteria analysis on it. So that's how we measure if the water is safe to swim in. We also took a second sample where we filtered it, which was what we did with the pump. That filtered water is going to be used to measure nutrients and dissolved metals in the water.
So it's a high salinity.
Which is interesting because we had a rain recently.
Yeah.
So rain, you would expect.
Yeah, wash out all the salt.
Low,
He's shown me how to do these things that I had no idea how to do. He's taught me how to sample. He's basically taught me how to use Excel and all the advanced formulas.
That's perfect. You see how when it dips down
Yeah.
like that, and that dip is right on the line?
Yeah, it's perfect.
There you go. Noah has the same job I had when I was 23 years old and finishing school. He does data entry. He does quality control checks. I really rely on him at this point. You know, he's 16 years old, and I could not do the job that I do now without him. Ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Getting off campus lets me be able to do things and see things that I would never be able to see except for like career day on campus.
When he graduates high school, he's going to have 3 years, maybe 4 years of work experience in a lab. And I think it's really going to set him ahead. When he's in college applying for jobs, he's got that extra bump of work experience, of relevant work experience.
To have an idea of what to expect before starting your first job, seeing people work, it helps you know the environment and know where you're going. That's what's really great about this.
Multiply that by tens of thousands of students, that's what we've done. Anybody who says that this can't be done at scale is absolutely wrong. It's human nature to do this at scale. It's who you know and what you know that go together, and we figured that out and made it into structures of school. We have an advisory system in our school that allows that to happen, or there's Abbott and Costello. Thank you, 10 minutes left, I'm good. So I got, that's all I got. What do you want me to do? I can talk with you all afterwards. But it's not just who you know or what you know, but who knows you know, what you know, that matters. Julia Freeland Fisher is a researcher for the Christensen Institute at Harvard. She wrote this book, just came out. We're all kind of all over it. But I talked to Julia quite a bit, and I said, you know, who you know is important, but who you know doesn't necessarily change the gaming of a system that's gamed basically for wealthier people who have the money to get their children tutored, because that's the system that we're in. It's a competitive system around grades or around internships that are out there, and the other kids really don't stand a chance. 36% of admissions in state universities and the Ivy League in the United States are legacy admissions. People pay to play. They may have good grades, but that's the game that's being gamed. At the same time, when we get our students out like Noah, and you get somebody who can validate what they know and who they are as a person, they get a leg up. Now they know somebody. And we have longitudinal data on our students 15 years out that says the internships, we call them learning through interest, that they had while they were in high school, after they've gone through 2-year or 4-year colleges, depending upon their own journey and pathway, 72% have work from the internships they had while they were in high school. Not college, high school. That's the kind of influence we had in their lives. Now, our advisors, our teachers, are also connected to those students, and they have form a community. And the community isn't a brain drain. People don't leave because they know that there's work that they like to do in the place that they were born in, the place that they come from. And a lot of times people leave because they don't think that the work is there. It is. They just don't know how to access it. So this is an equity issue around access. Access to people who can't get there because they don't have the who you knows that other parents have. You can't, if you just think a little bit about your own lives, about how you got to where you are, yes, it's on merit, but it's not solely on merit. Let's not fool ourselves with the exams. It's also about who knows you know and who you know. And so the things that we've done is taken each student and really placed them at the center. What is your interest in choices? We have a system where we meet as a whole school in the morning every day. We talk about some issues. It may be about climate change. Just came out today in the New York Times. 12 branches of the United States government said, if you don't do something about climate change, in the same administration that's not talking about climate change, now what are they going to do? If you don't talk about this and do something about it, in 50 years, we're going to be sunk, and you're going to lose 10% of your gross national product if you don't do something about it. That's what this study said in the New York Times this morning. You know how many jobs that means? About solar technicians, wind turbine generator engineers, all that, as Roy was talking about. Some people are living in the past, but the future is here, and only some of us are living in it. And I would argue that an exam system, with all due respect, that we all have, is a history and an accountant's world, not a futurist's world. These are the skills that students need. To the same day, today in the New York Times, there was an article about e-sports, electronic sports. I don't know if some of you saw it, probably not. E-sports is a multi-million-dollar industry now. The colleges and universities want to get in. They're giving scholarships out to students. Where are these things being discussed or talked about, a part of the curriculum in schools? The students are there. They're excelling in it. We're not paying attention to what they're really good at and what the future of work is going to look like. So there's our students in an advisory system. Parents are involved. We have a learning plan meeting 4 times a year that we ask parents who their children are, what they want for their children. We're the teacher, but we're listening. We're not just talking to students or to the parents. I'm going to move a little bit faster now because I'm running out of time. But we've developed guides for all the work that we do in our schools. They're online. We share them with people. We're a not-for-profit. And they involve learning plan, how to do learning plan meetings, how to do different aspects of our school. Don't have to do all the aspects of our school. Do some of them. But you can do them because we're out on the edge of public education. And in every country that we've worked with is a big word for us, and we never go to a place. People invite us to talk because, as my good friend Art Peterson said, who was one of my mentors from Yale, everything depends on the situation and the terrain, Elliot. We have no context about Hong Kong. I've been here twice in my life. But I know from the moon, the education system here looks about the same as it does everywhere else. And you all think it looks different, all right? And I travel too much to know that there are too many similarities, and so much of it is attitude and what needs to be changed. So we taken our work. We have ways of immersing people in the practice. We're not the only group doing this. But we're trying to get with our students and live in the future, not in the past. Not be accountants and historians, but be futurists. So here's where we started our work. We said, as Dennis said, who's somebody I've known, my buddy, we've been working together for 47 years. Not a day. I was 19, he was 26 when we started this work. Big Picture Learning's been around 25 years. We said, what the expectations that students have of us, not that we have of them. They need time to get good at what they got to get good at. The timing has to be right. They have to want to learn it now. We talk about just-in-time learning. We made it that way. Choices, authenticity, challenge, application. Is it relevant? Is it playful? Do they have enough time to practice? Do they practice that gives them a skill set and a mindset and the social emotional growth all twisted together around the activities that they're doing, where they're going to get better at something and not pick up bad habits? That has to be oversought by staff from the school as well as mentors. So we took those expectations and we developed practices and program and structure around it. It's not like our schools don't have structure. They have a ton of structure to them. It's just a different structure than what schools normally look like. And schools have looked like this and still do in some of the best places in the world. If you go to Oxford, It's an advisory system. It's a college system. You are actually doing independent work around what you want to get better at, to say it simply. So here it is, learning through interests, practice, relationships, all braided together. We have a tendency as educators and researchers to pull stuff apart and to get the narrowest variable. That's what researchers like to do and say, I'm right. It's not about being right. I don't care if I'm right. I care if it matters. If it matters to each and every student. Mattering is a big word. If it matters to parents, and I spoke to parents here in the last few days, and if it matters to people who really want our students to have fulfilling lives. I'll just say one thing that goes along, because I was listening real carefully to Roy. What people don't realize in the United States, because they look at the wrong data, is, and I talked to Ada about this yesterday, I asked her a question. Highest percentage of people, one of the highest percentages of groups of people with home ownership are skilled tradesmen. And home ownership is legacy and generational wealth. I got equity in my house. I can start a business. I can take out a loan. I can send my kids to college. And I know it's important here in Hong Kong. We're overlooking the cognitive sophistication of people who have skills both with their heads, hands, and hearts. And we're saying academics is the only way to get there, and we're making a gigantic mistake. And I do a lot of work around the skilled trades that I'd love to talk to people around. So thank you very much, and I'll stop there.